Hello YouTube, this is Step Ahead with Ernie Rivera. I am your host, Ernie Rivera, and episode number 2, we are not canceled yet. Very good. Okay, so for this episode, I thought I'd talk to you about the 3 financial books that have changed my life, and I believe they can change yours as well. Plus, we're going to give you a little bonus at the end, so we got that going on. Okay, so for book number 3 in descending order, we have The Millionaire Next Door. Now, The Millionaire Next Door is this great book that talks about the misconceptions people had about millionaires in this country being the United States. And it really tells about how people who believed in inherited wealth being predominant in this country, that was a little false, because most first generation millionaires are, most millionaires in this country are in fact first generation millionaires, people who have decided that they wanted to change for their lives, and they decided to come up with a plan. They paid special attention to every penny they were making. They paid attention to every business they were coming up with, and little by little they made it work. And that's contrary to a lot of people's beliefs about millionaires in this country, that they've inherited. They had old family money for generations, and it's while that does happen, for the most part, that just happens to not be true. It's a great book to teach you how to not only build but save your money. It's all about offense and defense, and how you got to know both. And that is my book number 3. For book number 2, we're going to go to Dave Ramsey and the Total Money Makeover. This is a really awesome book. It talks about little baby steps, as he puts it, to building financial wealth, and this really can apply to anyone. These financial steps go from, for example, like baby step number 1, which is saving, holding on to a savings of $1,000 that you're just not touching for any reason, unless of course it's an absolute dire emergency. And that's more to give you peace of mind more than anything else. But the baby steps start talking about the debt snowball, which is where a person's going to take account of all their debts and start filing them, not in the number of, or not in the amount of interest, but in the order from least to greatest amount of debt. And he tells you to make minimum payments on all your debts so you don't get into trouble. But after that's done, with the extra money you have, you need to start paying off the smallest debts first, as quickly as you can. And the purpose is that once you have these little debts out of the way, it's going to be just like a burden, a load off your mind. And it's really interesting. It's a really interesting read, and it tells you little steps about how, after you've paid off your debts, you know how to save, how to invest in college for your children. It talks about health plans. It talks about retirement, and it talks about how ultimately just so many people can retire with dignity. And isn't that the point, you know, to retire with dignity? Now, before I get to book number 1, I am going to throw a little bonus in there. It is an excellent read. I could not quite place it on my top 3. It's almost there, but it's not quite there. So let's give an honorable mention to Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad. Rich Dad Poor Dad tells the story of young Robert Kiyosaki growing up without much money at all in Hawaii, and his story about how he grew up with a dad who was very well educated, but he didn't have much in the way of financial sense. And so one day when he asked his dad how to become rich, he recommended that he talk to his friend's dad, who was, while he wasn't rich yet, he was putting together a number of businesses. He had plans. Robert Kiyosaki's father knew that this other man could instruct him a little better in the ways of financial health. And so when he went to his friend's father for advice, he ended up giving him a job, but it wasn't a paid job. It was more like an apprenticeship where he worked hard, but he learned everything he needed to do to eventually make money in his life. And it tells the story of Robert Kiyosaki, how he got into real estate, how he started making all these businesses. It's a really great read, and I highly recommend it. And for book number 1, I present to you The Richest Man in Babylon. Now this is just a crazy good story. It will knock your socks off. It talks about a man in ancient Babylon. The whole thing is it's financial advice told through story, and it talks about this man who was not quite a worker. You would call him an artisan, I suppose. He used to make chariot wheels in ancient Babylon. And the thing about Babylon is they had plenty of poor, but they had plenty of rich. They had plenty of rich people in their society. It was one of the richest societies in the world at that point. And one day he had a dream that shook him out of it just shook him out of his false ideals. He realized that he was sick of living day to day in just paycheck to paycheck. He was making chariot wheels for rich people, and every day he would spend his money on the essentials, on sandals for his feet, on food for his stomach, and he was not getting ahead at all. And upon talking to his friend, they decided to talk to another man who they grew up with, who, for some strange reason, no one knew why, he had become very rich all of a sudden in ancient Babylon. This culture that did have opportunities. That's the key. They had opportunities for growth, but most people didn't know how to take advantage of them. And so they talked to their old school chum, and he tells them the story of how he was younger and he was also tired of poverty, and he asked a very wealthy man, how can I be wealthy as well? And the man, after making a bargain with him, decided to give him the keys to financial wealth. And I would say this is an essential read. This is the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest book about finance anyone could read, especially if you're just walking into this area for the first time. I would highly recommend that. I would commit those rules to your heart. I think it's a great book, and I really, really hope it helps you out. And so I really want to thank you again for being with me on this, our second episode. I plan to bring a lot more episodes to you soon, including talking about why I went to school and did it help me, talking about refinancing. I have plans to talk to you about quite a lot of stuff coming up. I'm trying to pump out about 2 episodes a week minimum, so we will see how it goes, and I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you very much, YouTube. It has been great. Bye. Peace.